The last part of this session is a presentation by Patrice O'Brien. Patrice was an OT originally and has been working with Beyondblue on their workplace, as general manager of their workplace mental health team, and doing some good work. And when we started to look at the blueprint, the two organisations coming together to do this collectively is a really powerful statement to the community, because so often in this mental health space, organisations are set up as competitors. They're set up as competitors for funding, competitors for space. And so to collectively say we're going to do this together is really powerful. It was interesting chatting to Patrice. I haven't met Patrice before, and we find out that Patrice and I and my wife share something in common, quite a powerful emotional experience. I married a girl from Melbourne, from Essendon, and Patrice is a fanatical Essendon Football Club supporter, and so is my wife, and I am a really passionate Essendon Football Club hater. And so in a peculiar way, we bonded. So I'd like you to welcome Patrice. Point the clicker that way.
Thanks, John, and having only just met you, even though you barrack for Collingwood, I still kind of really like you. I know there was a few shocked, I know. Anyway, lots of nice people do, it seems. So, look, I wanted to start, as it sounds like a lot of people have started with today, by really thanking Jorgen and Mates in Construction for having us along to be part of the conference. I really loved John's introduction because it really echoes a lot of the way that I feel. I've worked at Beyondblue for almost 3 years, always in the workplace program. And when I first joined, one of the things that really shocked me as I started to, talk to lots of other mental health providers, I guess, and organisations, was this sort of deep sense of competitiveness. And, I think the way I look at it is it's a big enough problem in Australia. We've seen the stats and we've heard the stories today that there's plenty of room for us to all work on this together, and that's really important to me. So working so collaboratively with Mates to bring about the Construction Roundtable was really fantastic and continues to be really fantastic, and something we're really committed to. The way I see it is workplace mental health and mental health more broadly is a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, and there's so many different pieces to be put into place. And so what Jorgen asked me to talk a little bit about today is about one of those pieces that Beyondblue is working to put into place around this, and that's through our Heads Up initiative. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you. But just before I get into that, I imagine a lot of you have heard of Beyondblue. So we've been around since 2000, when we were founded by our founding chair, Jeff Kennett. Our initial focus was really very much focused on raising awareness about depression. And as we've evolved over the 17 years that we've been around, that's really broadened out to a focus on not just depression but also anxiety as the two most prevalent mental health conditions, and more recently as well a focus on suicide prevention. And we've also gone from being about awareness raising to really increasing that out to really trying to focus on behaviour change and trying to look at what things we can impact to really create change about the impact of these mental health conditions. Our workplace program at Beyondblue has been going for a long time, so since about 2004. But I think it really stepped up a big notch almost 3 years ago when we launched our Heads Up campaign. Just to get a bit of a sense, how many people have heard of Heads Up? Okay, that's great. So when we launched Heads Up, it was all about really trying to fill some of the gaps in workplace mental health. And I guess really broadly speaking, it was really about trying to create a bit of a national movement and a bit of a national momentum to really put workplace mental health right up there And I think the work that we've done through Heads Up, but also the work through so many other organisations who are working in a similar space, that is really starting to happen, and we're seeing a lot more momentum in this area, and we're seeing lots of great stuff happening as a result of that. So Heads Up itself is a bit of an initiative, and there's three main parts to it. So there's a website that's got lots of tools and resources. There's an engagement strategy that goes alongside of that, that's about partnering with organisations like Mates in Construction. It's about working with intermediaries and working direct with workplaces. And then we also run a national marketing campaign that's really about trying to drive that momentum and raise awareness. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. So today what I'm going to run through with you is talk very briefly about the case for mentally healthy workplaces, but I'm not going to focus on that a lot because I think we're probably all on board with that by this stage of the day. I'm going to talk briefly again about what a mentally healthy workplace looks like and a little bit about some of the steps in creating a mentally healthy workplace. It follows on really well from Alison's presentation. Then I'm just going to run you through a couple of the Heads Up resources that may be of interest if you're not aware of them. So in terms of why workplace mental health is important, I'm sure you've seen and heard about some of these stats, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. It's all there and all of the research is there on the Heads Up website if you want to explore it further. But creating a mentally healthy workplace is not just a nice to have. Creating a mentally healthy workplace is actually really about driving productivity, and it's also a good business. So there's real financial gains to be made. There's really fantastic impacts that can occur in terms of really engaging employees, retaining staff, creating a really productive workplace. So there's all of those reasons, but it always comes back to me about the most important reasons for a mentally healthy workplace, and that is those human reasons that we've talked about a lot today. So it's about the importance of having those really key staff in work at the workplace, not out of work. It's better for everyone when we have mentally healthy workplaces and people know they're in an environment where they can get support if they need it. And the other way I think about it is that we know right now that there's 3 million Australians who are experiencing anxiety and depression. And we know that these conditions, when they're treated and managed early, people can have an absolute recovery. But we also know that only about 50% of people are seeking that support. And what we know is that if we could create more and more workplaces where people thought it was okay to put their hand up and say that they were struggling and that they'd be responded to, we're not trying to turn workplaces into a whole bunch of psychologists, it's not about getting counselling, but if they were responded to with genuine care and concern, and someone who knew how to point them in the right direction for help, then we could make a really big difference to some of the impact of mental health in Australia. So what does a mentally healthy workplace look like? And Alison just gave us a great description of this, so I'm not going to go into lots of detail, but there's a bit of a technical description up there, but to me it is more something that you can describe through stories. So it is about those workplaces where if someone's struggling with depression or anxiety, or actually with any of those challenges that life throws us, all the time really, whether it be, someone in your family who's not well, or, a child who's being bullied at school, or whatever it may be, that person knows that there's someone they can turn to in their workplace and put their hand up and say that they're struggling or they're having a hard time, and they don't need to fear stigma or discrimination, and that person treats them and approaches them with genuine care and concern and can point them in the right direction for some help and support. That's what it looks like to me. Again, Alison did a great lead-in for this, and this is another way really of looking at that flourishing model. I think the message and how this relates to a mentally healthy workplace for me is that mental health is a continuum. So it's not just about being well or unwell, but at any point in time we can be moving up and down that continuum. And so to me, a mentally healthy workplace is not just about those who are at the red end of the continuum, so those who might have a diagnosed mental health condition who are really struggling with their symptoms. So sometimes when we talk to workplaces, they say, oh yeah, we've got all the right processes in place. Once someone submits an incident or a claim, we've got all this great stuff that goes into action and we support them. But really that's kind of too late. So mentally healthy workplace is about creating an environment where if someone's moving into the yellow or the orange on that continuum and they're starting to struggle, they know enough about mental health to sort of identify those signs and realise that something's going on. They know enough that they know their workplace is a safe place to go and get pointed in the direction for some help and advice, and they don't get up to that red end. And then there's the people who are in the green, so the people who are thriving and waking up in the morning and feeling really good and coming to work and being really productive. And a mentally healthy workplace is also about continuing to promote that. So it's all about the positives of good work. And I certainly know what it feels like to be really engaged in a job and how good that is for my mental health. And so it's about creating that environment where people are engaged, and you just make workplaces a fantastic place to be. So in terms of going about creating a mentally healthy workplace, I just wanted to share with you a couple of key things that I think are really important in doing that. So one of them is having leadership commitment, and we absolutely know and we've seen that this leadership commitment is really critical to really effectively implementing change. So to those of you who are in the room who are senior leaders, if you weren't already convinced about the importance of mentally healthy workplaces, I hope that you walk away today absolutely convinced. And to those who are not leaders but you're wanting to take this back to your workplaces, I hope you walk back armed with all of the evidence that you need to really put up a strong business case. And if you don't have quite enough yet, there's a heap of resources on the Heads Up website that'll help you to build that business case and take that back to your organisation. The next really important thing is about communication and collaboration. And this can't be just a top-down approach. It's something that really has to be owned by the whole organisation. If you think about sort of more traditional health and safety as it focuses on physical safety in the workplace, you have to get people to buy into that. If you just try and do it to them, it won't work. And mental health is exactly the same. We did a lot of work with Jetstar, for example, and their previous CEO, David Hall, who was a great mental health advocate, he used to say to us, our workplace mental health strategy has to be such that it's not just people in our head office in Melbourne who know that mentally healthy, who know what Jetstar's doing. We need our luggage handler in our most far-flung airport who really also knows that. And the only way you can do that is to get people involved and get their buy-in. So setting up things like cross-functional organisational groups to have input into this is really key. Really assessing the current situation is important. So a lot of stuff around good mental health is actually just really good business practices. Some of it's not really overcomplicated. It's about making sure that people have got really clear role definitions, that risks in the workplace are managed as well as they can be, or where they can't be managed, that there's protective factors that have been put in place around them. So a lot of these kind of good business practices might already be there. So it's about looking at what you've already got and building that into an integrated strategy. There's some key areas of action that I've got listed there, and you'll see that there's some real correlation with those key areas that Alison talked about. So it's things like raising awareness and reducing stigma, supporting people with mental health conditions, managing those risks in the workplace, and also promoting those positive aspects of work. And then once you've come up with those plans, it's about implementing your action plan and making sure that you've got resources to do that. And then, of course, monitoring and evaluating that and looking at some baseline measures and seeing what you can build on from there. A couple of tips for successful implementation. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things really quickly here. But I guess the real standard that you want to try and work towards is that you have an integrated strategy where workplace mental health doesn't sit off on its own, but it's part of your broader health, safety and wellbeing strategy. That's where you want to aim towards, but it might be a bit hard to start with that. So even at Beyondblue, after we launched Heads Up, we did our own Heads Up action plan, and just to get our heads ourselves around exactly what we wanted it to look like, we did keep it separate. But now we've progressed through that, and now what we're doing is we're integrating it into our much broader health, safety and wellbeing. So we want it to be embedded in a part of what we do. And it's really important to see any endeavours that you take in this area really as a system, not just an initiative. So you can't sort of say, oh, well, we're going to have our workplace mental health year and then that's done, thanks very much. It's like physical safety. It's something that you need incorporated and ongoing. So let's have a bit of a look now at some of our Heads Up resources. So Heads Up really it's a central point, an online portal, I guess, for workplaces. And really the resources available through Heads Up are for everyone in the workplace. So there's certainly a lot of tools and resources that are available for leaders or health and safety professionals or HR practitioners, but there's also resources available for every single person, every frontline employee. So as a very simple thing, as a very simple starting point to using Heads Up, you can just let your workplaces know it's available, because there's things that every employee can go and find in terms of supporting themselves. We've tried to keep the Heads Up website really interactive and have lots of different types of tools and modalities for getting the message across. So there's videos, there's tools, there's fact sheets, there's case studies, there's a whole lot of different interactive programs, so it's got lots of things in it. And there's also an action plan tool, which can be a really good place to start if you're just not sure where to go in your own workplace. You can put some details about your workplace in there and it'll give you some suggested actions that you may want to take. The website is set up with kind of 5 key headings, so you can see them up the top of the slide there. So creating a mentally healthy workplace is those kind of things that as a leader or as a health, safety and wellbeing professional, you can look at the types of things you might want to put into your workplace. But then there's a whole section on taking care of yourself at work. So that's really for individuals going and being able to find the information that they need for themselves. Then there's a section on supporting others in the workplace, and within there you've got a whole lot of information about if you're worried about someone you work with, how to have that conversation with them, what to do, what to say, what resources are available. It's also got a whole lot for managers who are managing direct reports and how they can support them. And some of the information in there is really specific. So it has things like, for example, if you're supporting someone who's been bereaved by suicide, how do you manage that? If you're supporting a workplace where you've lost someone to suicide, how do you manage that? So it's got some really practical tools in there. It's then got some information on rights and responsibilities, both employer and employee rights and responsibilities, and then a whole lot of resources around training and various other resources that are available. I should just mention, because I know within the construction industry and within some of the other industries you may work in, that small businesses sometimes miss out a little bit on some of this workplace mental health stuff. So early in the new financial year we will be relaunching the Heads Up website, so that homepage will look a little bit different, and we'll get some information out when we do it, but we'll have a very clear entry point for small business, and they'll be able to follow through that entry point and go through a journey that's really specifically tailored to small business and small business owners. And we'll be doing that, having taken on lots and lots of consultation with small business owners to really understand the unique needs of that huge group of employers and employees in Australia. So there's lots of resources, but I just wanted to touch quickly on a couple of resources that I thought might be useful. And the first one is really a suite of resources. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's available through Heads Up that's all about how to have a conversation. And, you know, Justin spoke to us so beautifully and sang to us so beautifully about the importance of having those conversations. And so there's some really great resources around that. So there's anything from materials that you can, hard copy materials that you can order online and get sent out to your workplace. There's online e-learning modules that you can use with managers to really take them through, giving them the skills and confidence of how to do this. There's website content. There's a whole bunch of stuff on how to have a conversation, and I think this is a really critical area. And you know, I was just thinking of one of the stories related to this for me, and a few years ago, you know, thinking about some of the discussion around mates in mining, a few years ago Beyondblue did an extension of our national roadshow, and we went out and did some work in the Pilbara and went around to some of the FIFO sites around the Pilbara. And one of them we went to, and I was talking to some of the guys there, and they said, you know, we're really rapt because we really know that our employer is starting to take this stuff seriously. And they said the reason that we know is because every day when we get on site, our supervisor says to us, how are you going? How are you coping with this swing? You know, was the internet okay last night? Were you able to Skype with your family? You know, we're a fair way in, you haven't seen them for a while, how are you coping with it? And they said, it's great, because it feels like they really care. And they said, but then a couple of times we've said, actually, not going too great at all, really struggling, finding this really tough. And they sort of go, So they'd sort of got to the point where they knew that they had to ask the question, but they just weren't quite sure what to do at the other end. And as Justin said, it's not that complicated, but people can get a bit nervous about it. It's not that complicated because it's about showing that genuine care and concern, but it's also about knowing where to point people in the right direction. And so some of these tools to just really give people that confidence, to build that capability, to take that conversation beyond just the how you're going, but then knowing how to respond, are really key to the success of creating a mentally healthy workplace. Another tool that we have available is some Toolbox Talks. So, and I don't know if I've mentioned it throughout, but I should mention that everything on the Heads Up website is free, so you can go in and access all of this stuff and it's all free. The Toolbox Talks are something that you can download. It's all available online. You can download, you can order hard copy kits if you want. And what it does is it teaches you how to run a session where you can teach a whole bunch of people to deliver 3 different Toolbox Talks. So one of them is about the symptoms of depression and anxiety, one's about the relationship between the workplace and mental health, and one's about taking action to support someone. So in a lot of your workplaces, you probably already have a lot of physical safety toolbox talks, and these are about really creating some mental health toolbox talks. So as I said, you can you download all the training materials. You don't need to have any background knowledge. It's all in really clear language. You can train up a bunch of people and then they can go out and deliver these toolbox training talks. And we've seen lots of these organisations use this approach with some great success. And one of the examples is Power and Water in the Northern Territory, and they trained up 7 of their managers to go out and deliver these toolbox training talks, and they set up a bit of a schedule for the talks to be delivered over a period of time. And that went really well, but one of the unexpected or unintended consequences that they got was that those 7 managers who did the training became really much more confident about talking about mental health in the workplace, and that created a whole lot of conversations that they hadn't seen coming, and quite a number of people put their hands up, and because they suddenly felt like it was an environment where they could. And so then it was something that they were managing where, there was some risks in their workplace, but there was something that they were managing where they knew what those risks were and they could talk to people about where they were at and make sure that they were giving them the support that they needed. So they're one of the examples of the resources that are available. So just to finish up here, the theme of this conference is leading the way, and I think that that's so important in this area, because I think it's up to Beyondblue, Mates in Construction, the Mentally Healthy Workplace Alliance, all of the other organisations that are doing great work in this space. We can all do our bit, but really until this becomes absolutely important and a part of the way we go about working in Australia, we're not going to get exactly where we need to go. And from my perspective, Heads Up is more than just a set of resources. It's really also about our campaign and our marketing campaigns and our engagement strategies and the movement that they create, and the partnerships that we have with the Mentally Healthy Workplace Alliance members, with Mates in Construction, and how we can use these partnerships and all come together to achieve outcomes like the fantastic work that's now occurring, partially as a result of the Construction Industry Roundtable. And we're seeing lots more of those things happening in all different industries. As Jorgen mentioned, there's the Good Practice Framework for Police and Emergency Services, where there's lots of activity happening. We've been having discussions recently with Energy Networks Australia, where they're wanting to emulate and do a similar thing for their industry. We've seen recently in Victoria the Arts Wellbeing Initiative that's all about creating this same kind of thing for arts organisations. And so I think that this growing momentum is really creating an opportunity for industries and workplaces and industry associations and unions to really all take this on and own it, and eventually as I think Andrew said, eventually do all of us out of a job, because it's just part of the way that we do business, and that's definitely what we'd love to aspire to. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrice, and Chrissy has a gift for you. For an Eston supporter, you're actually very good and quite coherent. I'd like to call on Andrew Merrill from GrowCon, who have sponsored the afternoon session, just to pass a vote of thanks.
Okay. Look, thanks very much. Just to go through, first of all, just to make sure I give it the attention it needs to, Justin, thank you very much. A new hero for you to come up here and tell your story here in such a powerful way. I think it means something very special to everybody in the room, and that's what we're all about. So thank you very much for doing that again. Thank you. Thank you to Kylie, Andrew and Graham. Fantastic to see this initiative, the Mates In, sort of going into mining. I think that's an essential part of the world. The fly-in, fly-out, those sort of areas, I think they're all important things that we need to get through. But I think that's fantastic initiative and a good kick-off, and to Glencore for sponsoring that for the kick-off. I think that's fantastic. So again, thank you to the three of you. Jaylee, thank you for coordinating the discussion on Mates in Mining. Sort of well done, having hubby or the partner in the group sort of always makes it a little bit more difficult. To Patrice, thank you very much for going through that for Beyondblue, and also to Jorgen and Alison. I'm the chairman of the steering committee for the Mental Health Roundtable in construction. I think I've gone away from today with a little bit more of an understanding of a massive task that I already knew that we had. There's some working parties working on it, and the steering committee, we've got a big job. There's a number of people I've already reached out to, and there's a few more people from today that I can reach out to that really try and get this industry to embrace this very critical aspect of our everyday working life, our family life and our community. So thank you all very much. Again, thank you for Mates in Construction for today. I don't believe I've sort of gotten anybody in there, hopefully. And again, thank you all very much. Thank you. So.